Hi, welcome to this video on using quadratic principles to solve a quadratic word problem. It is hopefully a video in a series of videos of different word problems. And in this one, it's going to feature the idea of factoring. Okay, so let's see what we have here. It says the length of a rectangle is 4 more than the width of the rectangle. If the area of the rectangle is 96 inches squared, what are the dimensions of the rectangle? Question mark. Okay, so for this problem, it would really make a lot of sense, as in all problems described like this, to draw a diagram. So I'm going to draw a rectangle, okay? And then on the inside of it, I'm going to say that it's a 96 area, inches squared, which you don't really use the squared to do the problem. It's just saying that that's the unit. And now we've got to do some naming of variables, okay? Well, there's a couple things here, if we notice. It says that the length is 4 more than the width, okay? Well, that means it tells you the length, but not the width. So I'm going to say that the width equals x, and the length is x plus 4, as described here by saying that it's 4 more than the width. Okay, and I'll throw that actually into my diagram as well, okay? Now, the important part here is to know that for a rectangle, the area is the length times the width. Okay? So, that being said, we just plug in the pieces that we have established and or know, and we see that the area is 96. So we're going to write 96 here. Pull down the equal sign. The length is x plus 4. So we're going to plug that in here and multiply that by the width, which is x. So we establish an equation that says 96 equals the quantity x plus 4 times x. So from here, we need to then make a decision on how we will solve this quadratic. If it's not obvious to you that it's a quadratic, one step will move that forward, and you'll see that just by distributing, it's obviously going to be a quadratic. And now we have to make a decision. Well, this is not vertex form or give us the opportunity to work backwards with square root. So we'd have to say, is it factored form? Well, it's not. And then say, well, is it general form? Well, it would be general form if, in fact, we just set it equal to 0 by subtracting 96, creating an equation that looks like 0 equals x squared plus 4x minus 96. Okay, so picking up again with the battle plan, now that it's general form, we have two choices. That we can either factor it and use the zero product property, or use the quadratic formula. Well, the first thing we should do is to take a look and see if it can be factored. So we see that it's an easy quadratic trinomial, and we wonder what are the factors of negative 96 that add up to 4. So I can just go to my calculator and do y equals negative 96 over x to find the factors of negative 96. To get a positive in the middle, we need to make the bigger factors positive. So I'll just see if any of these add up to 4, and I see that they do by having negative 8 and 12. So I'll factor this in x minus 8 times x plus 12. And then I'm going to use the zero product property for this, which says x minus 8 equals 0, x plus 12 equals 0. And then solve x equals 8 or x equals negative 12. Okay. Well, it makes sense for me to get two answers here, but the key thing you need to realize here is that the dimensions are not 8 and negative 12. You have to apply a little logic here and say, well, if x represented the width, I can't get a negative width, so having it be negative 12 makes no sense. So we see that x equals 8 here, but the question says, what are the dimensions of the rectangle? So I'll continue here and put my 8 back into my chart, which is going to give me x equals 8 here, and x plus 4 becomes 8 plus 4. equals 12. Okay, this is just a coincidence that I got 12 and the factoring yielded a negative 12 result that I crossed out. So just try to ignore that. So we see here that the dimensions are 8 inches by 12 inches. And that should be a pretty easy check by just saying that 8 times 12 is in fact 96, which it said the area is supposed to be. So again, the overview of this problem is to draw the diagram, establish variables that make sense as described in the problem, and then try to use the area formula to create an equation with the known info and the established variables. From there, you're just using your quadratic battle plan, which is being knowledgeable. If it's in vertex form, to work backwards with square root. If it's in factored form, use the zero product property. And if it's in general form, try to factor it and use the zero product property. But if not, use a quadratic formula. Right from here, you could have used the quadratic formula, which would have been lengthy compared to just factoring it and using the zero product property. So enjoy. It's a decently basic example of using a quadratic to solve a word problem. So I hope this was helpful.